UPN Narrator News has partnered with Adidas to bring you custom clothing for all occasions. The material is amazing and they have fits for all body sizes.
How Britain sold its chips for caviar. On 20th of January 2026, the British government approved plans for the largest Chinese embassy in Europe. A sprawling mega-complex planted near the Tower of London. Not a modest diplomatic office, not a symbolic building. A full-scale diplomatic campus. This was not a quiet planning decision. This was a geopolitical statement. After years of objections, warnings, protests, and national security concerns, the government chose to wave it through anyway. The message was simple, whether they meant to say it out loud or not. Money talks, security negotiates, and the rest of us are expected to nod politely while the wiring of our national infrastructure sits beneath a foreign superpower's concrete. Let's stop pretending this is just architecture. This is not a normal embassy. They are calling it an embassy. That word is doing a lot of heavy lifting. This is not a small consulate with a flag out front and a reception desk. This is a massive diplomatic fortress, consolidating multiple sites into one ultra-centralized hub. Thousands of square meters, hundreds of internal rooms, extensive underground levels. Sections of the design reportedly redacted from public view. That should worry you. Embassies already operate under diplomatic immunity. They already sit in a grey zone where oversight is limited and access is restricted. That is normal. That is accepted. But scale changes everything. When an embassy becomes a compound, when the underground infrastructure grows larger than most office buildings, when transparency evaporates behind the language of diplomatic privilege, the question becomes unavoidable. What exactly is being built beneath our capital? And why are we being told not to ask too loudly? The cables underneath your feet. This is where the conversation stops being theoretical. The site sits close to critical fibre optic infrastructure connecting London's financial heart. These are not decorative cables. These are the digital arteries of the British economy. Banking transactions, market data, sensitive communications, corporate intelligence, government-adjacent traffic. Anyone who understands modern intelligence gathering understands this reality. You do not need to hack systems directly if you can access the pipes. Proximity matters. Physics matters. Engineering realities do not bend for diplomatic etiquette. Even the possibility of long-term surveillance infrastructure embedded above critical cables should trigger extreme caution. Not casual assurances, not vague statements about risk being managed. Extreme caution. Instead, we got approval. Who is actually afraid? It is not just political activists making noise. Concern has come from security circles, from international allies, from former intelligence officials, from members of parliament across party lines, and from dissidents who understand exactly how authoritarian regimes operate beyond their borders. Hong Kong activists living in the UK, Uyghur campaigners, Chinese critics of the regime, people who have experienced surveillance, intimidation, and transnational pressure firsthand. They are not paranoid, they are experienced. When they say large overseas compounds are used for monitoring diaspora communities, for psychological pressure, for influence operations, they are not speculating. They are describing known behavior, and yet their warnings were brushed aside. The official story is predictable. Security services have been consulted. Risks are considered manageable. Consolidation makes oversight easier. Everything is under control. Nothing to see here. This is the same political tone we hear every time something uncomfortable happens. The public is not given the full details because the details are classified. The assessment cannot be independently verified because the information is restricted. The decision has already been made, but the reassurance arrives wrapped in calm language. Trust us. That is the argument. Trust the same political machinery that has repeatedly failed to protect data, failed to protect borders, failed to protect public services, failed to protect national infrastructure from cyber breaches, and failed to protect citizens from hostile interference online. This is not cynicism. This is pattern recognition. Diplomacy is not just policy. Diplomacy is theatre. Every decision sends a message. To allies, this looks like strategic weakness dressed up as pragmatism, a willingness to prioritize economic optics over long-term resilience. To adversarial powers, this looks like opportunity. It signals flexibility in standards. It signals that objections can be worn down over time. It signals that persistence pays. To citizens, it looks like the slow erosion of agency. Another decision made over our heads, justified in language we are not allowed to interrogate. Trust declines. Institutions feel distant. Democracy starts to feel cosmetic. The timing is not accidental. The approval conveniently clears the path for high-level diplomatic engagement, state visits, renewed trade discussions, and smoother political optics between London and Beijing. This is how geopolitics actually works. Favour is exchanged in gestures. Access is earned through concessions. But when those concessions touch national infrastructure and domestic security, the stakes change. This is not about whether dialogue with China is necessary. Of course it is. Every major power engages with every other major power. That is reality. The question is not whether diplomacy should exist. The question is where the line is drawn. And here the line was drawn remarkably far inside British soil. Foreign influence operations are not conspiracy theory. They are standard practice in modern geopolitics. Every major power does it to some degree. Intelligence gathering, soft power campaigns, political influence, information shaping. That is the world we live in. The difference lies in scale, intent, and governance. When dealing with states that combine authoritarian control, aggressive intelligence operations, and limited transparency, caution is not prejudice. Caution is realism. Ignoring those realities because they are diplomatically inconvenient is not enlightened policy. It is willful blindness. This decision communicates several uncomfortable truths. It suggests that economic relationships are now weighted more heavily than long-term security architecture. It suggests that political leadership believes it can manage complex foreign intelligence risks after they arise, rather than preventing structural vulnerability in the first place. It suggests that public discomfort is now a tolerable cost of doing business. And it suggests that the average citizen's intuition about national security is something to be managed rather than respected. That is not confidence. That is paternalism. This is not just about China, this is about Britain. This is about a nation that used to pride itself on strategic independence, now struggling to articulate where its red lines actually are. We want foreign investment, we want global influence, we want diplomatic relevance. We want to be seen as open, modern, engaged. But openness without boundaries is not openness, it is exposure. Engagement without strategy is not diplomacy, it is drift. And when major national decisions feel like they are driven more by optics than by principle, the social contract begins to thin. The government will insist this decision was careful, balanced, and responsible. Maybe they believe that. But perception matters. Trust matters. Transparency matters. And the uncomfortable truth is this. When a government approves the construction of the largest embassy of a geopolitical rival directly above sensitive infrastructure while withholding key details from the public, people are not irrational for feeling uneasy. They are rational. They are paying attention. And they are asking the question that should always be asked in a democracy. Who exactly is this decision serving? Because it does not feel like it is serving the people.